So I took all my beliefs and I, metaphorically laid them all out on the table, and I was like, like what's working and what's not. I need to get rid of some of this stuff, or at least recognize that I might need to jettison this if I'm going to be happy. I can't walk around all day thinking, oh my God, if I do that, I'm going to hell for damnation forever and ever and ever. I can't think like that, because then what's the point?
Right.
You know,
Yes.
what's the point if none of us are perfect? Is it just, somebody up there rolling the dice deciding what they're going to do with me? Like, I don't know. And
Yeah.
so, those kind of things, I had to ease up on life. I had to ease up on myself. But most importantly, I had to set up certain things that I do on a daily basis where that bring me the quiet, and that bring me, the peace, and that bring me the paying attention to the good stuff, the gratitude and all that sort of thing.
Emotionally unavailable.
Welcome to Emotionally Unavailable, the podcast where we dive deep into the world of emotional availability and intimacy. I'm your host, Malisa Hepner, and I can't tell you how excited I am to have you join me on this journey of self-discovery and connection. Whether you're navigating the complexities of relationships or exploring your own emotional landscape, this podcast is here to inspire, empower, and entertain. So get cozy and let's explore the depths of human emotions together. Hi guys, happy Wednesday. Hope it is wonderful. Today's guest is Daryl Dittmer. He's an entrepreneur, recently published author, and has been sober for decades. He is here to discuss sobriety, but more importantly, how life can go from a dead-end mess to something you can't imagine in your wildest dreams, inside and out. He's here to share his experience in the hope that it will help all who decide to listen. We had a really beautiful conversation, I felt. He was a lot of fun. Again, I love being surprised by men. I mean, I'm not that surprised just because, like, I kind of go off the vibe whenever someone requests to be on my show. So anyway, yeah, I loved this conversation. I love what he's doing. And yeah, so I will make sure that I include a link for his website. Let me look at his website really quick because I don't know if I need to stop. Oh, no. Okay, so on his website, there are his book. He's got links there for When I Stop Fighting. His Instagram is also When I Stop Fighting, but I'll make sure that I include the link for his website, his Instagram. It looks like really his website has, like, it's kind of a one-stop shop, but I'll still include his Instagram link as well. Like I said, super fun and just loving and caring, and I feel like you will take something away from the conversation for sure. My throat is hurting and I have a headache, so I'm not going to keep talking. Sorry, Daryl, for the short intro, but he's been on a lot of shows of like some of my buddies, and we all agree we love the dude. Check out his book, because what I really liked is like, he got sober really young, and so like that was just the beginning. I don't know. I think he really aligned with my ethos that there's not a target or a destination. Like, we're going to keep growing and keep evolving. So anyway, remember, you're great exactly how you are, and we don't have to fix every last thing about ourselves to be worthy of love and belonging. So just work on loving yourself more, and everything else starts to fall into place a little bit better. All right, that's it for me. Here is me and Daryl.
And I don't know about it, but I don't think you did, because usually I'm pretty good
Okay.
at looking at that stuff. But I did, however, go to your website, and I have to tell you, I'm really liking the names of your books.
Oh, thank you.
When you
Thank
stop
you.
fighting, the road you're on is your own asphalt. I like that.
Thank
When
you.
I stop fighting, the unexpected joy of getting my head out of my ass. So I was wondering, well, I had a couple questions. I kind of, you're sober, and I kind of was wondering not as much what led you to become sober, because usually, there's always a rock bottom and da 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 da, like, there's a thing. I kind of wondered what in your history led you to overconsumption to where you had to get sober.
Right. What led to that need to
Yeah, what were
seek
you
to
escaping
escape?
from?
Right. I've thought about that question 10,000 times. I have been asked that question maybe 9,000 times. And, it's interesting because there isn't something I could just pin it on and say, this is it. I could go down the road of, my mom and dad were both pretty tough human beings, and they expected a lot from us in terms of what we brought to the table. For me, whether it was sports or grades or manners or
Mhm.
all that kind of stuff, those sorts of things I think affected me. But I also think there was a part of me, and sometimes there still is a part of me, where I just don't feel like I quite measure up,
Mhm.
or I've got to strive and struggle to achieve, to feel good,
Yeah.
like that kind of thing. And that's waned over the years, but if I was gonna answer that question with something fairly succinct, I think that would be it.
Well, and I'm glad that's your answer, because something I say to my clients sometimes. I mean, I'm really cautious using this type of verbiage because I don't ever want anyone to feel like I am downplaying what addiction is. But I'm like addicted to everything. Like I not anymore, because I've learned to like regulate and shit. But before, I mean, I was the person who's like, I just have an addictive personality. If one's good, 100's better. And like, even, I've been really open on here about using medical marijuana. And there was a time where it was every single day in the evening. But in the last few months, I haven't at all. Like, because I'm not as agitated. And that's the reason I was using it, is because in the evening I was like, okay, I'm done. But,
Mm.
I got busy doing something different, and then being away from it for just a few days, I was like, "Meh, all right." So I don't have the desire. So, I mean, my brain works differently now. But the reason I'm telling you that is because there was a time when I was kind of like questioning, maybe I shouldn't be doing this every day. And to be clear, I don't care that I was doing it every day, but like I was kind of like judging myself a little bit, and I would be in the best mood ever. And that's when I would want to go get high. Like, because I'd want to enhance. Everything needed to be
Mhm.
enhanced times 1,000. That was one part of it. And then the other was escaping, or like, because after I went through what I lovingly refer to as the divorce crazies after a divorce, and that included lots of drinking and other stuff. So, like, I was just balls to the wall, like, just. And
Right.
so I feel like I have a good understanding of what the mind does for addicts, even though like I'm lucky and I never got to a place where it was like, this is completely ruining my life or whatever. And I'm glad, I'm glad. I have My parents were addicts and both died related to their addictions, but
Mhm.
I have noticed that in healing, what was in hindsight now, what was actually happening all of those years was the chronic like overthinking. And that's truly what I was trying to escape, because I didn't know how to feel. So it sounds like, and I wondered too, your book about pulling your head out of your ass, was that kind of what you were talking about? Was like just being in your own head?
It was a lot of things. It was being in my head. It was people and circumstances living rent free in my head. It was not knowing that I was never taught that, expressing emotion or allowing emotion to sort of come through me, or it's okay to cry, or it's okay to feel, or it's okay to be sad, or it's okay to be really freaking happy. You
Any
know,
of
my
it,
my
yeah.
right, my wife and I were just talking. We just took a walk, and we were just talking about. She asked me the question. She said, you know, how do you experience joy? And how come I'm a pretty stoic dude overall. I'm not like, woohoo, I don't let stuff shoot out of me, and I also don't, like, I don't just kind of mope or anything like that. I'm pretty stoic. So my answer was, I feel the joy. I'm just not a, light off the balloons. It's kind of in here, and it wells up in me, and I love it, and it's beautiful, and I feel that. And then I asked her the question, and I know this is a little off track, but I said, when you say joy, do you mean joy from, oh, we just had a grandkid? Or do you mean joy from how I live my life, and just that natural feeling of something beautiful welling up within me for no apparent reason? So, there's lots of cool ways to
Yeah.
experience emotions, and sometimes, I've cried probably more in the last 10, 15 years than at any time prior to that.
Yeah.
And to me, that's a beautiful thing, right? Like, just whatever it is, allowing it to be felt and honored, and etc.
Yeah. I talk so much about this, about how really none of us were allowed to feel anything, and we're all kind of walking around with the too much not enough narrative, like I just never quite being what the person in front of you is wanting you to be. And even though I believe it was just a perception that I had, I mean, I don't think that people had the level of expectation. I mean, sure, caregivers did, but like just friends or coworkers or whatever, I think I placed all these expectations on myself, and then didn't measure up myself, and just believed that I wasn't measuring up for them. And then I did have people a lot of times telling me I was too sensitive, because I was trying to learn how to communicate feelings, but like none of it made sense to me. Even though, I mean, we had like family therapy as a kid and stuff, but I was the golden child in my family. So I was the one no one worried about. So none of that stuff was ever really focused on me. It was always my brothers, who had a very outward expression of their pain and their trauma. I was very internalized and very like, yeah, I don't think it's really bothered me that much. I mean, and so I think, again, that type of stuff is what, like you saying you're stoic, makes me want to ask you if you're an Aquarius, but also, um, I feel like that means you just don't have a lot of outward expression of yourself, unless you're being very intentional about being outwardly expression. You know what I mean?
I do, and I'm a Sagittarius, by the way.
Oh, wow.
I don't even know what that means, but apparently it means it means something. I have heard about what it means, but whatever. I'd be interested in that. But so yeah, I would say that there's also, there's sort of ends of the spectrum, right? There's the I don't show any emotion, and I'm just like whatever, everything's pissing me off, and
Yeah.
I'm just gonna clam up. And then there's the, oh, I am whacked out beyond belief, no matter who's around. If I'm in a mall, if I'm in the car, if I'm, and
Yes.
I would say I'm somewhere in the middle, probably leaning more this way with the stoic thing. I mean, I'm not pissed off. I've been doing stuff for myself and my growth and improving me for a long time, and far from perfect, there's no doubt, but I don't feel like I'm carrying around this big bag of shit anymore.
Right.
I've been freed from that. Now, not to say that there's not always more, but I'm not caught up in the, oh, I have to before I
Right.
am allowed to feel good, or I need to deal with this before, life is worth experiencing in a
Mhm.
positive way or whatever. Like, there's none of that. That was that was out of me a long time ago. But
But that was something that
anyway,
you experienced where you kind of felt like there was some destination point of when you were going to be, I mean, I'll say good enough. I don't think that that was our thought, but like in hindsight, I can see that that's what I was, striving for was good enough. Is that something you experienced as well?
for sure, for sure. I mean, there was a time when I literally I couldn't look someone in the eye. I couldn't hold a conversation. I was so emotionally sort of closed up that I was scared to death. And I'm not a small dude. I was, people would look at me and be like, "Oh, tough guy,"
Mm-hmm.
and inside. I'm curled up like
Yeah.
a little kid. I'm scared to death, and
Mm-hmm.
and that's what I was at that point in my life. I was a scared kid because I didn't know how to, and I'm going to say be an adult, but that's not what I mean. Just grow up emotionally and grow through some things and experience some things and understand dude, life isn't so bad, and so early on when I needed to measure up, it was okay. I didn't grow up in a household that had much money, so I want to go make money. I'm starting to see this, spiritual sort of way of living opening up in front of me and dipping my toe in, even after having I grew up as a Lutheran by upbringing. So, I'm dipping my toe into something like, oh man, am I going to go to hell? If I do this, if I meditate or if I, whatever,
Yes,
like
I
all
have
that
those
sort
same
of stuff.
fears.
Right. So those kinds of things were scary. But I think there's much to be said for feel the fear and do it anyway,
Hmm.
which I think is a title of a book. But anyway, so that's kind of the thing for me. I love experiencing, and I don't say that I love doing stuff that I'm scared of, but I'm willing to do things that I'm scared of for the most part because the fear is just the fear. It's not real. It's
Right.
just, that little what if thing. Um,
Yeah.
and I've been doing a lot of what if things for a long time. And I have to
Yeah.
keep lining them up if I want to keep growing, in my opinion.
I'm kind of new to doing the what if thing because, man, I was really bad at catastrophic thinking. Like, it was actually something I fully accepted about myself before because I was like, well, this is just who I am. I'm really afraid. Like, I just went into the ocean for the first time at 44 years old last summer.
Cool.
Sharks, because I was like, if there's a
Right.
0.1% chance it will happen to me, okay? Like when people would be, or even I've always flown, I've overcome like that was something that I have done regardless of the fear, but that was one of the very few things I did. But like when people quote statistics to me, like, it's more statistically probable that you'll blah blah blah. I'm like, you don't understand. I believe every bad thing in this world is meant for me, okay? So like it
Mhm.
just didn't help at all. But recently in the last year, I've been like, okay, because people will even tell me what their plans are, and I'm like, oh my God, you're gonna die. And I don't ever say it out loud, but it is what I think initially. And then I'm like, I have this whole
Uh,
routine I have to go through where I have to calm myself down and be like, no one's gonna die. And then even this is such a tangent, and I'm so sorry. I'm having a
no, I
really
love it.
like unclear brain day because I'm tired, and so I'm just going to take you on a journey with me for 1 second. I am a person who certain things I still have these protective layers built in. So one of the things is, and my husband knows this. And he listens to the show, so he's not going to be surprised to hear this. But one of the things is I don't allow myself to believe that he won't or wouldn't ever be unfaithful because I used to really struggle with like insecurity and jealousy and all the things, right? I don't anymore, but this last protective layer is I will not relieve myself of the idea that he wouldn't do that. But what I can do is, and what I started to do a few years ago is decide it doesn't matter. Like, that is literally how I have to live because I'm like,
Mhm.
what does it matter if he did? Like, if you're not looking for evidence of it, you're not gonna know. So, what you don't know won't hurt you. That's where I had to get to not care about that anymore because it really did consume a large amount of my life. And I didn't realize until recently, which is kind of embarrassing, that that's what it was a protective layer. Like I can't release that because then if he did, oh, like I'd have to be so embarrassed that I let myself trust him to that level. And now it's
Mm.
like it's not even worth fighting with myself about. So like I just don't, but I just realized like I do still have like some of those protective layers. And I think that some of my catastrophic thinking is that too, where it's like, well, if I do it and I fail, then you know. So anyway, I have actually totally forgotten what the point of that was, but did I have a question
I
for you
liked
in
it.
there? I'm so
I,
sorry.
no, no, you're fine. You may, if I'm just going to go for a second, if you don't mind, because a couple things
Absolutely.
just tagged me. So I'll tell a quick story without going on too much of a tangent. So my first book, When I Stopped Fighting, when I was probably 19 or 20 years old, and I'd gone through drug treatment. I got out, and I decided nobody in my family has graduated from college, so I decided, you know what, I'm going to try to do that. I'm going to go to school, and blah blah blah. So I'm just doing that oh shit stuff immediately, which wasn't probably the smartest thing in the world because I wasn't capable of handling it
Right.
necessarily. But I was, and in many ways I didn't handle it very well. But so, and I grew up in a family, as you could probably tell, where we wrestle with problems. No pain, no gain. Just you got to fight till the
Rub
end.
some
Rah
dirt
rah
on it,
rah.
walk it
Whatever.
off.
Whatever it is. Yeah, exactly. You're not hurt if you're not bleeding out, whatever, that sort of stuff.
Mhm.
And and I don't want my family to sound like cold, but it was just kind of like
Yeah,
Midwestern
I'm in
work
the
ethic,
Midwest. Honestly, this is
tough.
how everybody's family was in our generation. I mean, truly.
Yeah, no,
Truly.
agreed. Yeah, absolutely. So when I'm talking to my sponsor or mentor, and I'm just starting to, eke my head out of my ass. It's probably still up there pretty far. It is up there pretty far at that time. And I was telling him all my problems, all these things I'm wrestling with. He said, Daryl, when you stop fighting, the fighting stops. And I was like, oh shit. Like
Yeah.
that kind of made sense to me, but I'm young. I'm still, either I'm 19 or I'm 20. And how can I understand that? So it made sense to the degree it could at that point in time. But then, as I'm continuing to move through life, I mean, obviously it stayed with me as one of the most important things that I've ever heard because I fashioned my books out of
Mhm.
that story. So, and the other thing I thought of, there's a book that I'm reading right now. It's called Taming Your Gremlins, and I forget the author,
I
but
feel like
Taming
I've
Your
heard
Gremlins.
that title.
It's a really cool book, and I've been in the midst of this business thing that I've been dealing with, and the catastrophic thinking has been like kicking the crap out of me, and that's not normal for me and hasn't been for a while. But it's either, and it's funny because what he talks about in Taming Your Gremlin is just notice it, and just noticing it can allow it to go away. And
Yeah,
and I
not spending so
understand that
much
because
time trying
it's
to be like, uh-uh.
right. You push it away and it keeps coming back. Push, and
Yes.
so it's very similar to Stop Fighting. It's very similar to, my wife handed me the book and that's why I'm reading it, but she's like, it's really similar to yours from that perspective. If you stop fighting, the fighting can stop.
Yeah. I love that. And that was honestly one of the I'll say in the middle of like the spiritual evolution that I had was resistance keeps us stuck. And the many different ways that manifest has been really fun to witness because I won't realize, oh, that was just me resisting until yeah, I'm a verbal processor. So like I'll even be having a conversation like this and then I'm like, oh, in real time I'm just understanding that's what was happening. But all of the things that we spend time judging ourselves about, like, you know better, you should this or you shouldn't have or whatever. I just don't use that language with myself anymore because it's so unproductive. But I think where it can be a little like vulnerable for me to say things like that out loud still, even though I say these things every single day, especially on here, is we were kind of taught that accountability means like crucifixion, and that if
Mm.
you can't fully account for your actions or be responsible for yourself if you're not crucifying yourself or allowing others to crucify you. And I think I probably still fear the crucifixion of others just a little bit, or more than a little bit probably, but I mean, I don't let it stop me, but it's those are one of the things where there's always that second of hesitation before I say something because I mean, I'm a recovering people pleaser to the max, like I don't allow myself to go down those rabbit holes, but it's still my natural like eat. And then I will be like, and then let's step over the line. But all of the ways that I used to hold myself accountable. Man, it was just perfectionism being sneaky, And now I feel like without that layer, it's easier for me not to resist because the resistance came from the crucifixion. You know what I mean? Like it's just so much
Right.
easier for me now to just relax and be like, that's who I am. I mean, even with this like thing with my husband, it just is what it is. Like I will release that little protective layer one day whenever I feel like I'm ready to do that. That's today's not the day. So I just have to be like, well, so what if he is cheating? That's just, that's
Right.
just the way my brain is working right now.
Right. And I don't think that's the worst thing in the world, in terms of honestly, because we all have protective layers. I have protective layers. I don't want to get my ass handed to me emotionally, and because that's difficult to deal with, and that has been a theme for me in terms of my life, like who's going to maybe let me down,
Mhm.
or who's going to hurt me when I'm not expecting it. And
Mhm.
and so that little layer of protection, which it gets thinner and thinner. It used to be an 8 foot wide cement
Yeah.
wall, and now it's probably a whatever, some sheet of aluminum or something that's workable for me. But that's a difficult place to be. And to your point, Melissa, I really think that not we have to allow ourselves some grace. We have to allow ourselves some, like, maybe I'm just not there yet, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And accepting myself for where I am is where the not fighting comes in for me. And knowing that, but that doesn't mean stop trying. That
Right.
just means stop kicking the crap out of myself for where I think I should be.
Mhm.
And it's really important to distinguish that from not trying, because not trying to me is not acceptable for me in
Right.
this lifetime. I have to continue to try.
Well, and do you feel like that was kind of one of your problems that like fueled addiction was the fact that there's that all or nothing mentality, and the all meant if you don't do it perfect, I got to talk a bunch of shit to myself and like allow criticism from others? I mean, don't you feel like that fueled that a little bit?
I think it did, but I don't think I had that. I didn't have that. I wasn't mature enough in my being to even like get that as a concept. Now, the beautiful part is, and the difficult part is I go into treatment and I remove the drugs and the alcohol, but I've been addicted to smoking, to chewing, to work, to whatever,
Yeah, yeah.
tons of different things. So just because I get rid of the thing that I'm using to anesthetize myself, whatever that
Mhm.
is, doesn't mean I have my shit together. So my entire life has been the process of trying to get my shit together. And I've been doing it for a while, but it's also there is no sort of, oh, I made it,
Right.
like, oh, thank God I finally got to the promised land. Like, no, I mean, the promised land is for me is that like that joy
Yeah.
we talked about. The promised land is being able to have that well up in me without any necessarily any particular reason.
Yeah, living a life
And
you're in love
that's
with.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Those moments and that life where, when I used to look at life as I was trying to just grab life by the horns and wrestle it into whatever I wanted it to be, which had to do with money, it had to do with success and that whole what people equate as success,
Mhm.
and then somewhere down the road, and I don't know if it was 25 years ago or whatever it was, I was like, you know what? Success to me is and has been since then waking up in the morning with a smile on my face. And so
Wow.
what does it take to wake up in the morning with a smile on my face? It takes a lot of work. It takes, attending to my body, my heart, my mind, my soul, like all of those things, and attending to my financial situation, all that. To not just be worried about
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's a little bit of the story of we all have this stuff we've got to deal with, and we get we should get better at it. Should all over myself as we age,
Yeah.
right? And as we mature and as we continue to try, and I've found that's how it rolls out.
So is this why you say getting sober was just the beginning? Because had you, I mean, I feel like I already know some of what you'll say, but I was curious if you thought all you had to do was get sober and then like that would be like the be all end all. And then you realize like, oh, I got some real
I
shit to deal with here.
Yeah. I think I was so young and raw, and I mean, when I got sober, I was 19, so I didn't have a clue
Mm.
about living.
Yeah.
Just living on the planet, and like supporting my life and myself and supporting myself internally and all of those sorts of things. I didn't have a clue. So yeah, I was completely just a babe in the woods looking up at all the big world and scared shitless while trying to pretend like I'm not.
Yeah.
Um, and that was absolutely how I started the whole thing. So I didn't have a clue, but the good news is I didn't know how much of a clue I didn't have.
Right.
And that probably saved me from, you know,
Uh-huh.
doing something like that I would have regretted because I wouldn't have been able to handle it had I known.
Yeah. Yeah. So then if you got sober like super young, what kind of precipitated you becoming who you are now? Like, was there an event or have you just been on that evolution track since sobriety?
I've been on the evolution track since sobriety, and not that's been evolving too, because as for me, as I learn more, as I've experienced more, as I started to meet people who supported that and also meet people who didn't support that and have to sort out life and who's on the team, who's not on the team, who do I need to jettison, who do I need to keep,
Yeah.
all that sort of stuff. It's been an interesting process. So, it's sometimes I'm really good at it, sometimes I'm not so good at it. But for me, what I've had to do over the course of years is number one, figure out what works for me. I had to at some point, and this is probably in my 20s, I had to sort of take apart my belief system because the Lutheran stuff, the don't show your emotions stuff, all that stuff I had to unwind. So I took all my beliefs and I metaphorically laid them all out on a table, and I was like, what's working and what's not.
Yeah.
I need to get rid of some of this stuff, or at least recognize that I might need to jettison this if I'm going to be happy. I can't walk around all day thinking, oh my God, if I do that, I'm going to hell for damnation forever and ever and ever. I can't think like that, because then what's the point?
Right.
You know,
Yes.
what's what's the point if none of us are perfect? Is it just, somebody up there rolling the dice, deciding what they're going to do with me? Like, I don't know. And
Yeah.
so, those kind of things, I had to ease up on life. I had to ease up on myself. But most importantly, I had to set up certain things that I do on a daily basis where that bring me the quiet, and that bring me, the peace, and
Hmm.
that bring me the paying attention to the good stuff, the gratitude, and all that sort of thing. And that's been decades in the making. And I've
Yeah.
been doing those things for a while now, but it takes time to figure out what works for me and what may not.
So what period of time in your life are your books referring to?
My first book is referring to my journey. So, from childhood, just sort of explaining my story, who I am, where I came from, winning, losing, vulnerability, all of those
Hmm.
things that I had to move my life toward a place that was more, and I'm not a big buzzword guy, but just authentic.
Yeah.
Um,
It's a good word
so
though.
what's
It's a
that?
good word though.
It's a great word. It's a great word. And so it's not a, you should, or everybody needs to do this, or, here's the only way to get happy, or, like
Right.
whatever. It's a my story. 75% of it is just my life, a lot of funny stuff, a lot of sad stuff, a lot of whatever, just all kinds of crazy things. And I have had people tell me, they laughed, they cried, they did all sorts of great things, in terms of experiencing emotion with it. But it's I like to look at it as, the last 25% or so are the lessons that I've learned, and my lessons, not necessarily everybody's
Yeah.
lessons, and nothing anybody needs to do, but hey, here's some of the things that made sense to me as I've gone along.
Yeah. And so were you, excuse me, were you inspired to write that because you had recently, before writing it, found like a really significant piece for yourself, like a slice that made more of your learning come all together? Or was it just like, I've always wanted to do this? Or like, what made you want to write that book?
Probably something a little more in between. I met my wife. I didn't get married till a little bit later. I was 39 when I actually got married. But
That's how my husband was.
um,
Yeah.
I said to my wife, and she was probably either my girlfriend or fiance back then, and this was 20 plus years ago.
Hmm.
I was relating some story to her, some nut job thing, some drug thing, whatever, just my life, and telling her stories. And she's looking at me and she's like, that's just not, I don't see it. I'm not seeing that in you. And I said to her, remind me to write a book someday. And so, not like she reminded me every day to write a book, but that's kind of where the seed got planted, because there's some interesting stuff, and
Yeah.
interesting things that happened, and things. Probably the biggest catalyst for me was the reason I want to tell my story, and the reason I did tell my story, is because I wanted other people to potentially be able to benefit from that,
Yeah.
and maybe just recognize some things in their life that might help them either change direction or try in a different way, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was the catalyst.
So kind of a culmination of all of the learning that you've had, or at least I feel like the learning that we have comes in a couple of different categories, maybe two or three, like, because I cycle through these lessons over and over, but like at a deeper layer. So there's like the lesson of allowing yourself to see you and allowing others to see you. And that looks so different every time I learn that lesson. Or the lesson of imperfection should be the goal, like, or just accept yourself, unconditional positive regard, and it looks different every single time I come across a new lesson in that category, you know what I mean? But like, I don't know, I think it's really cool that you got sober so young and were so intentional all of these years about your growth and evolution and accomplishing what you felt like was meant for you. So do you feel like this is kind of a catchphrase, but do you feel like this is your purpose?
You know, yes and no. Um, because there's a big part of me that looks at the entirety of life as my purpose.
Mhm.
When I was a kid, my purpose was to be an idiot.
Yeah.
And like seriously, and not because I wanted to, but is there something larger working in this universe that, you know, somebody I may not have known that saw me at a party one day and said, you know what, that dude's an idiot. I am not going to do what that person does.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? I'm not going to follow in that person's footsteps. So, you know, Viktor Frankl's book Man's Search for Meaning talks about, and it's a unbelievably beautiful book, but he talks about, you know, meaning. We're all searching for some sort of meaning, and whatever that is throughout our lives. And I feel like, you know, this has given my life, writing books has given my life a different sort of meaning, probably more congruent with who I am and who I have been throughout, you know, these last few decades, as opposed to like what I've done for a living or what I've,
Right.
you know, like
Yeah.
basketball or whatever, you know, like
Yeah.
stuff that I do or that I like to do that I don't like to do, but this aligns more with my what I feel like might be my meaning in life.
Yeah. I like that. And I've been thinking about this so much more lately just because I have always felt like I was intended to and would have used the phrase it was my purpose to experience some real shit, get through it and then share with others how I did that. And I still believe that, but I also think like as long as I'm living within again authenticity where I'm accepting who I am, loving who I am, having that unconditional positive regard, um being willing to take up space that I'm allowed to take up, feeling and understanding that nothing external of me changes my worth and value, like even if that was all I did and I didn't make it like some life's mission to share that with others, I'm still within my purpose, you know? Like I
Hmm.
and I'm starting to come around to the idea that the purpose is to live out this human experience and I'm doing a real good job at that. You know what I mean? And that this
Yeah,
other thing, meaning and legacy and impact are a part of that, but that like I don't have to measure up to anything to be living within my purpose. So that's like kind of a new understanding for me, whereas like this whole idea of going through shit and helping others get through their shit, that's always been my north star and it's still there. It's still very much like my personal mission, but I also don't have to like measure success by that either. And I can feel like I am impacting the world just by changing my own, you know?
100%. Couldn't agree more. And I look at it like, and I break it down to things like, you know, if I'm doing the best I can with myself on this planet, um, I'm good for everyone else.
Mhm.
You know, if I'm not doing the best I can with myself, I might end up in a bad mood or angry or whatever. And, you know, maybe that person who's checking me out at the grocery store, and I mean not looking at me checking me out, I mean checking me out for paying for my groceries. You know, am I able to smile at that person because I'm doing my life
Mhm.
in a way that's meaningful, or am I just pissed off and I have my head down and I don't interact and I don't say hi and I'm cranky and all that sort of stuff? You know, to
Yeah.
me, that's how we impact the world. We impact the world one person at a time, and it doesn't have to be, these big things like, the book writing and all that sort of stuff. It can be, how am I living and how am I treating me so that I can treat the rest of the world in that manner, and
Yeah.
with grace and with honor and all of those things. That's the real stuff that changes the world to me.
Yeah, and it's crazy because I'm always saying when you change, the world around you changes and the ripple effect, but this is a totally different, it's like the other side of the coin almost what you're saying. I'm like seeing it even a little bit differently, whereas, and it's probably going to sound like I'm saying the same thing I did 5 seconds ago, but I feel like I have a different understanding now. But it's almost like you're affecting change in a positive way as long as you're living within alignment of like what lights you up. So like even if what lights you up is, I don't know why I'm using this example, but like creating video games, right? And like you're just like, this is the thing that just sets your heart on fire. It makes you so happy and whatever, and you create video games and you're living in alignment with what makes you happy and you feel really good about yourself and whatever, then yeah, that's, you're going to go out into the world and make other people happier in your presence, happier, whatever. But because of who you are in that moment, and that's your impact. So it's not even, yeah, I feel like I'm understanding for the first time a way for it to not even be tied to anything else that you're doing, as long as what you're doing is within what lights you up. I don't know if that
Right.
makes sense.
It makes complete sense. Yeah, it's what am I, if I'm going to work every day and I hate it and I'm sucking it up for 10 years or 3 years or 2 years or 5 years or 10 years or whatever it is,
Mhm.
and it pisses me off and it makes me angry, and I'm driving home and I'm not happy and I got to stop by the grocery store and I'm not happy, whatever it is, and I'm giving off that energy and that vibe, and sometimes that behavior
Mhm.
that isn't doing good things for the world.
Right.
That's because there's a lot of people running around, and sadly, that are just pissed and
Yeah.
not happy, and that's okay. Everybody's got their own lessons to learn. Everybody's got their own stuff, and I fully understand and believe that. But how can people who are aware of the fact, what we're talking about right
Mhm.
now, those people can change the world in a very different way. And I'm a firm believer in that. And that resonance, if I'm resonating with my life, and that doesn't mean all the time. I mean, shit
Right.
happens, bad things happen,
Yeah.
people die, all that stuff. People let us down, but if I'm in general resonating with my life and resonating in here with what I'm doing and how I'm treating myself and how I'm treating life, I mean,
Mhm.
that's changing the world. I absolutely believe it.
Yeah, me too. And I think you're so right that, I mean, I say this, but again, like I don't know, sometimes whenever I'm saying things out loud, I just have new understandings, little aha moments that I'm really appreciating.
Mm,
But yeah, I think if, as long as you understand what it takes for you to be cared for, and how to meet those needs for yourself, instead of, because I know I broke my own heart over and over and over and over and over, having all these expectations for everyone around me, and believing really wholeheartedly that it was their job to meet these needs of mine. And that was a real turning point in my life whenever I realized those were just expectations and they were not needs. I don't need that shit to function or to be happy or to whatever. And the things that are true needs are things I can meet my for myself. So there's a lot less betrayal feeling whenever you come to that understanding, because that's what I felt all day every day, was just betrayed. Especially like by
mm,
my husband, because it was like, you should have known that I needed you to do that. I mean, and not in the typical, like, how women oftentimes think that a man should be able to read your mind. I went way beyond that, but truly, I was miserable in my job. I was so
Mhm.
miserable. Even though like people would say like you're so good at what you do and you're helping kids and blah blah blah. The structure of the job sucked the life out of me. I worked in education and there's just no I also relied heavily on external validation, which you're not going to get working in education. So like it just wasn't it I'm glad it was a real catalyst for me, but I again was just so betrayed by a system because I had all these expectations for it. And now I know how to take care of myself. I know what I need. And even like you said, waking up smiling in the morning. Like if I don't, I know exactly what I need to do to get there, Except like today I'm super tired and you're reaping the benefits of that. I'm so sorry. But um I just think yeah, you're exactly right. We have to love ourselves first.
Yeah. I mean, and it takes time to do that. And a lot of times in life, and I shouldn't say time, it takes experience sometimes to do that because I'm a big believer that there are, when it comes to addiction and people like getting sober, some big event, they always say, well, you need to get sick and tired of being sick and tired. And that is absolutely true. I believe that 100%. But there's also 1,000 times after you get sober that you're going to become sick and tired of being sick and tired, whether it's a spouse or a job or yourself.
Mhm.
Like, I can't stand myself, like all those kinds of things. And so whatever those things are, oh, I can't stand that I haven't taken care of that yet, or I'm upset at myself, or I didn't do that, or I'm upset at them because they didn't do that, or whatever it is, there's got to come a point where we just get kind of put our foot down, in a metaphorical sense, and
Yeah.
just say, you know what? I got to figure this out, and I'm sick of this. And what is it going to take? And then we start exploring, and then we start being open to other ways of thinking about things. And whether it's books or, groups or whatever it is, there's plenty of ways to learn about, thinking, and which leads to feeling different about life and about myself and about what I'm capable of. And so, yeah, I do believe once we get to those points in life, the sick and tired of being sick and tired will change. If we
Yeah.
don't get there, then things aren't going to change.
Absolutely. I this lady that I talked to once said that she asks her clients in the beginning of working with them, are you willing to be wrong about everything you think about yourself right now? Like, are you willing to be wrong? And I thought, now I am, but damn, for so long I wouldn't have been. Like I was very like, you don't know shit and don't tell me. And I was so triggered by the idea that somebody could possibly know better for me than I did.
Right.
So I think that all kind of ties in together.
100% agree. Yeah, 100% agree. It's interesting that, and I asked myself that question as you were posing that question, about asking yourself. And I'm like, you know what? There's a very real possibility that I'm wrong about a lot of shit,
Yeah.
and in my current state, wherever I'm at in life at any given time. And to ask ourselves that question could expose, those places. And I think that's a really cool thing to ask, no matter where we are, no matter how long we've been doing it, no matter, probably mostly, if we ever think we got it, because once you think
Right.
you got it,
I've
life will
exactly.
show you that you don't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just recently I was feeling just, it was just one of those really good days. You're on top of the world and it's sunshine and rainbows and whatever and I was like, "Man, I found the answer or whatever." I don't remember what it was, but I was so sure. I was very sure and that thought popped in my mind. Like, are you willing to be wrong? Because I still this is, I'll just say it's in my astrology to believe my way is the right way. I'm embarrassed to say that, but it's true. And that's something I have to fight against all the time because it is the right way for me. And I do see a benefit, like cherry picking at least some of the things I believe to be truth could benefit anybody, but like you don't have to live exactly, in the same mindset or whatever all the time for it to be right for you to have your own thing or whatever, and there are times when I'm easily triggered by somebody else having this starkly different thought about something. There
Mm.
are times when it's like today, like you've said things that made me think about things differently. And it's not that I'm opposed to that. I love that. I like to continue to grow. I mean, truly, it's what this show is about, is me growing, and then sharing that in real time with others, But like, I've discovered when people ask me, like, what is your show? I'm like, no, I really think this is about me and my journey. And like I'm a student of life and I'm learning from every single person on here. There's times when it's just a professional conversation, but like it's lighting me up and other people get to hear the ideas we brainstorm together. But there's times that I'm really learning in real time and I'm sharing that as well. But yeah, I'm still learning there are other right ways. And that's new for me because I didn't used to be able to even admit that.
Right. It brings up a thought for me that, there are many things that I think now or that I hold to be true now that I didn't hold to be true 25 or 30 years ago or 10 years ago or even 5 years ago in many cases. So I think a lot of it has to do with timing, and a lot of times, and like we talked about 35, 40 years ago, I wasn't ready to hear a whole lot of stuff that I'm completely cool with hearing now, or that I was cool hearing 20 years ago, or whatever it is. So a lot of times, I'm a believer that principles are timeless. There are certain things that are just timeless, but the sort of factor that matters is a person ready from a timing perspective to understand it at a different level? Because there's plenty of time in my life where I didn't understand things the way I understand them now.
Right.
And I would tell myself, oh, you're an idiot, dude, 25 years ago. Not in a real sense, but just kind of joking around. Like,
Yeah.
what were you thinking?
Yeah. Or now
It's
I'm just
timing.
like,
I think timing is
oh, I
huge.
get it. Like, I'm not even frustrated at myself anymore. I'm just like, I know what they were saying when they said that now. I get it.
Right. Right. When I first got into 12 steps, and that was, a great catalyst and a roadmap for me for living, but they had stuff on the walls like one day at a time and easy does it and let go and, all that sort of stuff. And I'm like, what is this stuff talking about? I didn't understand a bit of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then it started to hit me like, 2, 3, 4, 5 years in. I'm like, oh, that's what they mean, and then like you said, the understanding deepens over time. So that one day at a time from many years ago meant, okay, I only have to stay sober one day. And that's today. Excuse me. And now it means, it means more like being in this moment
Mm-hmm.
at any given time. So the experience, as my experience changes and as I mature, my understanding of things can change immensely.
I love that. Well, I've had such a good time with you. I feel a little guilty because my brain is not at full capacity today. I feel like
You're good.
I didn't bring the level that I would usually bring, so I feel kind of bad, but where can we find you?
My website is probably the best place to find me, which is DarylDittmer.com, and that's DARYLDITTMER.com. If you'd like to check out my books, those are both on Amazon. You can type in "When I Stop Fighting" or "When You Stop Fighting," and they'll pull right up.
I love that. And I'll make sure, like I said, to have all of those links in the show notes as well. I appreciate you being here. If you don't mind, hang out for 1 second.
Not at all, Melissa. Thank you.
Emotionally unavailable. Emotionally unavailable.
Hey, make sure you've given the show a 5-star rating on whatever platform you're listening to if you haven't already. And check out my website, empoweredwithmelisahepner.org, or my link tree on Instagram at melissa.hepner to check out my latest offers or workshops. All right, that's it from me. So make sure that you check out the show notes for links. And until next time, let's all just keep swimming.
Emotionally unavailable.
INDEPE and cut.